See if I can get set up over here. We'll chit chat about some stuff. All right, it's gonna be a little shaky for a minute. Waiting on one to get in here. What's happening now?
Hi, sir.
What's going on with you?
Oh, not a lot. Good day. How was yours?
It was all right, man. I drove the RV and the Jeep back from Beaufort, South Carolina. It was driving an RV through Columbia, so I mean it could be worse, but it wasn't great. But we also could have just stayed home and not been in Beaufort, so context. Waiting on Bill to figure out how to work the internet, and as soon as he gets squared away there.
I've never done one of these before. No?
Yeah. It's just, we put ourselves out there for other people's humor and bashing. It's fine.
We'll get some of that, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man. Like, the thing about shooting is that there's a lot of stuff that's subjective based on what somebody perceives. But like, I don't know of any like shooters worth their salt that are also eye doctors that would be real wound up to go against so like I got nothing. Like, I can tell you what I perceive, but if you say it ain't so, I got nothing, right? Like, it's just okay. I guess it ain't, but it was interesting, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds with it. There we go. There's Bill. I got it. Hang on, Billy. I'm coming. There he is. Hey, man.
What's happening, y'all?
Hey.
How are you?
Doing real damn good.
Huh? Retired life?
Huh?
The retired life?
Man, retired life. What's up, dude? I highly recommend it. Pretty damn cool.
Oh, man. Just, hey, we got Walther Arms off in this mug.
Goddamn right you do.
No, I mean, they joined the live, not the hat. But I mean, it's, coincidence? I think not. Right?
Yeah, that was planned.
Right.
Can y'all keep up with that shit going on down below, all them scrolling?
Hey, read fast.
What's good, Bill?
Think fast, baby. Here we go. But anyway, all right, cool. Well, we'll bust it off here, man. So, Josh, here's how we landed on this. Okay. Or we, and I'm trying to keep in mind that those watching have no idea what we've been talking about all day long too. So what we're interested in, what Bill and I have been going back and forth on is when you're shooting and you're shooting real good, are you actually target focused, or are you dot focused, or are you both, right? And then the other side of it is, if you're shooting like spaz and you suck, are you target focused, dot focused, or both, or does any of this even matter? And we're just making a whole lot out of nothing, right? So like I've got my personal experiences, but the thing about my personal experiences is they are all based off of perception, not anything I can actually prove, right? And so I'm interested in, can you quantify that perception with, yes, that is backed up by medical science, in some form or fashion. So Bill, why don't you pose to him what you posed to me?
So this wasn't something that just came up recently. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I guess I've kind of been delving into this for some time. And so this is going to require a little bit of historical perspective.
Okay.
And so back when I was born in 1903, just kidding, I ain't that far back.
Hey, real quick, I just thought of this. Josh, will you introduce yourself for those that don't know what in the world we're doing right now, who don't know who you are, and Bill yourself as well?
Yeah.
Age before beauty.
Bill Blair's with Tap Rock Tactical, retired copper out of Washington State, was a cop for 25 and a half years. I've been running a training company, Tap Rock Tactical, since 2006. I was running a training company with a friend of mine before that from 2003, 2006, and then we kind of parted ways, and I've been doing this thing as a side job until I retired in 18, and then went full-time at that point. So last 5 years going to coach mainly. Somebody just asked a question in a group that made me think about it. How much police do I train? Regular Joes, military, this and that. And I am absolutely law enforcement heavy, and obviously because of my background. But I don't just teach gun shit. I also teach tactics classes and other shit, and so that accounts for some of that stuff. So that's my background, my history, and I'm the dude that started this whole mess, bugging Mark about what does he see when he shoots that shit.
Nice. Josh Getz, live in the Denver area. Went through school, became an optometrist, graduated 2019. Been back working for a group practice since then. Shoot a little bit on the sides anytime I get time off. That's what I like to do. So dabble in a lot of areas of shooting, but not to the level that these guys do. So just sharing what I know about the eyeballs.
You're A-class shooter, right?
I know, sir. I don't actually know what classification-wise. That'll be the adventure.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Super cool.
So,
and then I obviously am Mark Smith with JBS Training Group. I'd be shooting lots of stuff with lots of different ways to do it, right? So like that is pistol, scope rifle, dot rifle, 50-yard carbine, 500-yard carbine, and everything in between. So that's who we are, man. And we're going to do our best to keep up with these questions as they come in, but just understand that we can't just cut a conversation right in the middle of it because somebody's like, hey, what color's your hair? Or whatever. So anyway, carry on, Billy.
So a chunk of this, man, is transitioning to teaching pistol optic instructor-based courses. And this is kind of one of the things that, what am I going to do with that? And, there's already dudes out there that are staking their claim in that and have staked their claim. I'm certainly a latecomer to that, to that specific topic. And so I was thinking about, what are other guys teaching? What are they doing? Obviously ask some questions about what are you teaching your class? Is there something that's missing from it? That type of shit. And maybe I can be the guy that comes in and fills in that small niche where these other guys that are already doing a great job teaching the class may not be covering it for whatever reason. They have background experience that's not there, that type of shit. And so one of the things that everybody seems to be doing is, we all have said this, is, it's a red dot, to stay target focused, stay target focused, stay target focused. And then you see drills coming up that have been around for a long time, like taping, the objective lens and forcing guys to shoot both eyes open. So one eye seeing the dot, the other eye seeing the target, and that kind of shit. And of course, we've been doing that for fucking ever. I mean, we went to red dots and rifles. My team did in 1996, 97 or some shit like that. And we started doing it immediately because we were transitioning off of MP5s with iron sights. And of course, binding, however the fuck you say it. Aiming has been around since forever. And so we all started doing that shit. And so when I started shooting a red dot pistol, well, let me even back that up further. As my vision started to degrade, and depending on the distance to the target, I saw the value of shooting both eyes open with iron sights based on what I do. I want to see the entire environment. I want to have more situational awareness. Don't need to be squinching an eye to get proper sight alignment and all that kind of bullshit to make hits depending on what the distance was. And so I've been doing that for a long fucking time with iron sights. Now I go to red dots full time in 2012, 13, whatever the hell it was on my pistol. And of course it was an easy transition. I was already doing that with rifles, already shooting both eyes open with pistol. And the thing that I found was, of course, I could shoot at longer ranges and still maintain a level of accuracy with the red dot that I couldn't achieve with the iron sights. And so a portion of this, as I was going through trying to teach SWAT guys and dudes within my agency and stuff like that to start shooting with both eyes open, was doing some research. A specific thing, I tried to do some day, we were texting earlier, all of us talking about some shit and trying to do some research. I recall a study from the Force Science Institute, and I talked about this in classes, and the study was essentially, excuse me, they asked for a bunch of volunteers These volunteers came in, all levels of shooting, up from never touched a gun before up to super duper USPSA man, all this kind of shit. And for the people that had never shot a gun before, they just said, this is a gun. You pull this thing, you know, bullet's going to come out the end. My record is very low as far as dry fire. When you get out here for the test part of this thing, the gun will already be loaded. You don't need to, if it stops working, just put it down and we'll fix it for you. It wasn't even a pistol class. It was just that. But what they told them was, this is iron sight alignment. This is iron sight picture. Put that in the middle and you are surely going to hit the targets that are out there. And that's all we need you to fucking do, type of shit. And then of course the super duper shooters didn't need none of this information. They're just like, yeah, I got it, whatever. And so they put these glasses on them that had cameras facing their pupils. And they said, okay, no gun in hand, just, hey, focus on this pencil eraser at this distance as an example, and now this distance, and now this distance, and so forth and so on through all of these different distances. And the distances were typical distance for a rear sight for the person that was holding the gun, typical distance to a front sight for the person holding the gun, and then different typical ranges that you might shoot shit on a firing line, like 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 yards, that type of crap. And so they said, hey, focus on this shit. They took a snapshot of the dude's pupil, somehow measured the pupil and said, okay, he was absolutely looking at this thing at this distance. We know what size his pupil is. And so anytime his pupil is dilated to that range, that should be the distance he's focused at. And then they turned the camera into a video, and somehow it was linked to the gun or whatever. They could stop it and tell exactly when the shot was discharged, and then go back, pause the video on the eyeball and say, you were dilated to this. So at the moment you discharge this shot, you were looking at the front sight or whatever the fuck, and kind of give you an idea, or try to get an idea for this study of what people actually look like when they were shooting a gun. And the interesting thing to me out of that was the people with very little training shooting would focus on this, because that was all they knew to get success, because they're low level of training. The higher level dudes, what they found was, regardless of the distance to the shot, sometimes those guys were focused at a point that would have been a front sight, sometimes a point that would have been a rear sight, sometimes the point of where the target was located during this engagement sequence that they were doing, and sometimes at a point in between all of that shit as they were going through a focused transition point. And the interesting thing to me at that point with irons was, I probably really don't need to see all of this with any real clarity. I'm just going to, if I focus at a point halfway between the front sight and the target, my brain can figure out what all this fuzzy shit means and probably give me the best opportunity to not waste time looking for those sites. Now, I looked for that study today, and this was, I mean, years ago, decade or more ago that I read this. I couldn't find that. What I did find from Force Science Institute was the MESA study, which I guess is a fairly well-known study now. And what they found on that study was rookie officers tended to pause in the shooting scene. This is the same type of glasses, and they're doing simunition type engagements, where the one that I read about was I think it was a fucking bank teller scenario, and the guy comes in, he starts getting loud, and then he's slamming his hand down and shit like that, and then a gun gets produced, and the rookie officers were delayed in shooting the dude, and when they brought the gun up, all of them had a focal shift to the gun, or sorry, to their sights, as they try to confirm what the sights were. They also include a whole bunch of senior guys with a ton of training experience and operational experience, time on the road, all this kind of bullshit. And what they discovered with those dudes was that they made the decision to shoot sooner, but they also maintained target focus, and the hit ratios were dramatically different. Like 80% hits for the good guys looking at targets at the target with irons, and the new dudes getting, I mean, like an abysmal hit ratio as they spent time trying to find the sights. This also delayed their response, because their brain was like, you got to see them sights, homie, if you want to make the hit, right? That's how you're going to solve the problem. And so those two studies coincide, but I couldn't find the information exactly on the first one. At any rate, this makes me start doing this with iron sights. As my vision starts to fail, I go and try to find what's the best sighting solution for a dude. And I wasn't wearing glasses. I could just tell my eyesight was going. And so looking like the big dot sights back in the day, I'm sure some of you guys remember those things. I got the big orange basketball sumbitch, so I could kind of see that thing. Then switched to a really bright fiber optic, and essentially trying to run it just like I would a red dot, right? Just see the front sight somewhere in the middle of the dude and pull the trigger. So I was doing all this shit. I started fucking around with a dovetail mounted red dot sight in like 2010, but it's sitting that high above the bore. Had trouble finding it like everybody does when they first go to red dot. And to me, it was kind of a novelty at the time. And I guess to some degree it was because they weren't as robust as they are today. And so I ended up shit canning the dovetail sight put piece, messed around with it, but wasn't carrying it and didn't even consider carrying it as a full-time option until my eyesight totally shit the bed. And then maintain the standards on my team. I had to look for a solution. The solution was I paid for my own block to be milled, have a red dot put on it, all that kind of bullshit. And that, of course, elevated my shooting back to where I could maintain my place on the team and not be some kind of a hindrance to those dudes. So all of that being said, I have often thought, depending on what the shooting thing is, right? What am I really looking at if I'm not, absent being forcing myself to do it, or a specific drill where one or the other may make more sense, what am I really doing? And I think a chunk of this came about from those red dot classes and everybody target focus, target focus, target focus. And so I've been asking dudes, what do you think that's doing for you? And make no mistake, target focus is the way to go for discrimination purposes, to be able to cease fire if the environment is changing. My bullets have done the trick, so I don't want to keep putting bullets in this dude because I've solved the problem, right? Misshapen head or whatever the issue is. All of those things on the tactical side of the house make sense, but does it really have anything to do with me shooting more accurately? And that's one of the things I was hearing. Well, you want to say target focus because you're more accurate with a red dot that way. And so I started making the pistol optic instructor dudes do a drill that I have been doing, which is 25-yard B8, slow fire, so you can spend all the time you want to find the dot or not, whatever the hell you're going to do. And I want you to stay hard target focus for these 10 rounds. And I'm reminding them as they're firing 10, look at the fucking target, man. Don't go back to the dot, right? Target focus, target focus. So they shoot it. I generally shoot it with them. We score it, we come back, new B8, and I say, okay, now hard dot focus, man. I need you every shot, right? You can go back and forth and confirm everything's hunky-dory, but at the moment the shot is discharged, I need you looking at that red dot, and let's compare those shifts. So the one I just did in Chicago, I shot a 106X looking at the target. And then I shot a 98, a 7X, I believe, looking at the dot. Now, the short data there would tell you, well, looking at the target's better, man. You scored a 100. But those two scores are fucking comparable, in my opinion, based on the number of X's and also the fact that a 100 is not normal for me. I'm a high 90 shooter on a slow fire B8 consistently, but a 100 doesn't happen all the fucking time, right? And like I was telling Mark, as I've done this test for myself, sometimes dot focused gives me a better score than target focused, but I think that's shooter error coming into play on all of those. It has nothing to do with what I'm happen to be fucking looking at. And so that combined with me teaching with Mark, and he's really been into this, hey man, dig a hole through that target, right? Bore a hole through the cardboard type of thing, bore a hole in the area that you're looking at. And he is saying that he has discovered that has helped him a lot, which made me start thinking about, I wonder if at Mark's level as a GM, is he doing what that initial Force Science Institute study showed me, which was he is constantly changing his focal plane and not recognizing that sometimes he, with his dominant eye, he is hard focused on the dot. Next time he's hard focused on the target. Next shot, he's hard focused somewhere in between those as his vision transitions. But he's really not, he doesn't pay attention to it because the results are showing that he's obviously shooting at a very fucking high level, both on speed and on the accuracy piece. And so that made me start thinking about some shit. And then, of course, I think about Olympic shooters. Pure accuracy all the time in the world. I mean, their fastest shit is slow as fuck, right? When they're shooting bullseyes and whatnot. But them some bitches take the damn eyeball, right? And so all they get is the dot when they're shooting optics. And so there has to be something to that on the accuracy side of the house that makes them at the highest levels on the planet look at the fucking dot, because that's the only eyeball that is uncovered. So having this conversation with Mark, Hunter Freeland, and I had been texting. This kind of was prompted too by a social media post where a guy said, look at the dot hard type of shit. And so started texting some fellas and doing some shit. And of course, that led us up to where we're at right now. So there's the long fucking story about why we're talking about this shit. And it's really just an exploration. Target focused is the way to fucking do it, goddammit. And no one's disputing that. But I'm curious if we are truly staying target focused throughout an entire engagement sequence, or are we shifting our vision based on what we need to do?
Now, Josh, do you want my backstory as far as my discovery and exploration of this, or would you like to respond to that first so you can kind of stay on task with everything?
I'm going to weigh in on just a few things on those studies real quick, and then kind of the pieces of this, and then so two pieces. When they do the studies of measuring the pupil size and watching where you're focused and that kind of stuff. So pupil size is dependent on multiple factors. And so one of that is where you're focused, or to the depth at which you're focused. Just like a camera lens, as you focus that in, it changes the depth at which you're seeing clearly, but it also changes the size of the pupil or the aperture. The other thing that leads to that is in a human body, like a physiologic response, whether that's being stressed or being relaxed, seeing something that excites you, all that kind of stuff can change the size of the pupil. So they were measuring the convergence of the eyes as well. So they had cameras over both eyes, and they say, where are they pointing? Because if they're pointing like this, we know they're looking down the highway. And if they're pointing like this, they're reading a book. And so my suspicion is they had that built in there, but that would be one thing in that study to make sure that they were getting results.
So they did, and they was, and I am an optometrist, I don't know the language, but there was essentially a 3% or a 3 degree or a 3 whatever the shit plus minus deviation on what the pupil is. And then I do not recall the name of these fucking glasses, but they made it sound like it was a known entity for these types of studies. But they were able to determine, and what the other thing these glasses did in the MESA study was there was also a camera pointed at what you were looking at. And so however my eyeballs were focused, it would put a red dot on the thing I was focused at. Does that make sense? So they come back and check the video data of my eyeballs, but while it was occurring in real time, this dot was tracking exactly what the hell they were trying to scan and do some shit on. So does that help you out at all, or do you need more info on that?
I figured they used the right equipment for that, but that's one thing to measure. So with that, there's kind of two pieces and we'll just like limit this to pistol shooting, because as we dip into other stuff, it can complicate it a little bit. But especially in the iron sight conversation, we got two ways that the eyes are working. One of which is depth, where are they focused? And so the eye term for that is accommodation, and that is how much is the eye flexed and how far or close is it looking because of that flexure. That's happening in the lens inside the eye. The other piece to the puzzle is the convergence. And so those two are linked. So if you flex the eyes up close to look at your cell phone, your eyes are going to turn inwards towards your nose so that you don't see two cell phones side to side, because it's up closer to you than something further away. And that's just because our eyes aren't located in the same place. They're next to each other horizontally. So the whole dot versus target and the irons and front sight, rear sight, target, or all three, or blend, or go halfway in between. When we put a dot on a gun and put a dot on a target, it should turn it into a two-dimensional two-dimensional picture instead of a 3D thing. So the goal is to eliminate the need to focus at anything up close. So for you, Bill, that's why it works really well, is because now that you're needing glasses and you got the readers built into glasses, and so you'd either have to lift your chin up and look at your front sight if you were to do iron sight stuff and try to see, a piece of lint or a scratch on your front sight, you'd have to dip into the progressive a little bit. For the red dot, the goal is to not have any of that be a problem, and just say, let's simplify this to a 2D solution, which is dot on target, and they're located in the same place. So if the here and the dot is located here physically, because that's where it's mounted to the gun, but the target's here, we see the dot projected onto the target, make it a 2D thing, and don't focus back here to dots. Same thing, people say like, oh, use the iron sights to pick up your red dot, and if you focus on your irons like you did prior to introducing a dot, when your front sight focus, the dot will look blurry. That's because the dot's not designed to be seen at the plane of the gun. It's animated for a further distance. That jive so far?
Yep.
Cool. So the goal is for me, when we use the word focus, I think depth. How far away from something are we focusing? Focusing up close or focusing far away? So target and dot focus, to me, I understand the difference, but from like a technical thing, I think of those as on the same plane. So there shouldn't be a focus change back and forth. Now, attention can 100% be on, my attention is heavily driven, boring a hole through the X-ring in a B8, or no, I'm watching the dot and tracking the dot floating in whatever kind of wobble zone we have. Those are a different thing. But for me, the focus the eyes in that case should be completely relaxed and not focused at something up close. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Mark, do you want to dive in? Or you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you my perception, right? And it's just that it's a perception. I can't prove any of this. All I can do is attempt to recreate the environment in which I perceive what I perceive, right? So I'm out on the range. I talked to you. I think you know Nick Young. Yeah, so I talked to Nick. Nick goes through this class with Steger, and he's like, he's tripping balls about target focus and all this, and it catches me off guard, right? Because I'm like, man, like that's what we've been doing. Like, what's so crazy about it? You know what I mean? Like, I don't get it. And then he's like, man, no, you're not target focused enough. And I'm like, I don't know, like, I mean, I feel pretty target focused. Like, I'm not sure, like, are you, you think I'm more like 80% or like, you know what I mean? I can't really figure out what he's talking about. And I go out to the range one day, and I think I'm almost positive I did this with a rifle. I was getting ready to shoot something, and it was going to be, I'm going to start out up close. Yes, that's exactly what it was. So he told me, he said, go to the range with a rifle and do this transition exercise and pay attention to this, this, and this. And so I had like 5 targets set up in different depths all over the place, but the target that you started on was like 3 yards. And the idea was to see where your majority of missed shots were. And what we ended up finding out was that the majority of missed shots are actually on the easiest target, which is the close one, because we're just not paying any attention to it. We're disrespecting it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm getting ready to do that. And just like a lot of dudes do, you know, they're getting ready to shoot. I pick the gun up, get an idea of what's going on, you know, put the gun down. And I remember perceiving a sensation in my eyeballs. Right. And I was like, what in the world? So I picked the gun up, you know, set it back down, and I kept doing that. And what was happening was when I would hard focus into the alpha or the A of the alpha or whatever, when I would pick the rifle up into my field of view, there was a perceived shift of focus happening, you know, that was, I had never noticed before. And when I would drop the gun, it would do it again. And so, you know, just like your muscles are an eyeball, like I could feel that occurring. I could tell that was occurring. And so that was when I first started being like, dadgum, like maybe I ain't as target focused as I thought I was, right? Because when I put the gun in front of my face, something happened. And so I kept playing around with it. And I had gotten to the point where when I first occluded a dot, right? Everybody was doing the dot occlusion thing, you know, and then once again, Nick influenced me to do that. And I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. And when I did it, I noticed that my scores and my hit factors on certain drills were dramatically reduced. Like, it was just terrible. It was a nightmare. And it was because I couldn't do things like I used to do them. Like, I couldn't see the way I used to see. And so I kept at it, kept shutting the dot off until I got to the point where, like, now, if I pick a pistol up in front of my face at a target, I cannot tell you whether or not it's occluded or not. Like, I don't notice it at all, whether it's taped up, whether it's not. So I think the eyes have learned to accommodate whatever, you know what I mean? Like, humans are adaptive creatures. I've done whatever through repetition to get rid of that perception. When shooting really, really fast, I'm talking 0.2 splits or less at very fine aiming points. You know, like dip can size or smaller, potentially like coin size. I've noticed that if and you may call it attention, you may call it focus. I don't know what the right word is. All I know is that if I'm shooting boom, boom, or triples, right? Boom, boom, boom. If at any point I break focus on that single spot, I will get a shot that lands oftentimes high, majority of the time high and right. And I've noticed a trend with the majority of misses I have are high or high and right. And what I've started to notice through dot occlusion and just paying more attention to what's going on and trying to figure this out is I believe that what is happening is the dot is lifting, and the giant red orb that is the highest contrast thing in my world, my eyes are catching it, right? They're catching it on the way out, and they're looking for it on the way back. And then as soon as I see it come back, because I don't track a dot in the window like a lot of people do, right? Or they say they do. it disappears and comes back. When it comes back, I'm firing based on the, like, surprise, I'm back. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yes, red on brown, go. You know what I mean? And I oftentimes get those high hits. Now, another interesting thing is I was shooting 25-yard bill drills the other day, matter of fact, like 2 weeks ago. And man, like it was, you know, I'd get 4 Alpha 2 Charlie or 3 Alpha 3 Charlie. And it was fast. I mean, we're in the 2.5s, 2.75s at 25 yards. It was fast, but it was still like some shots. Like it would be a really tight, like dip can size or smaller Alpha group, but then I'd have these flyers that would show up, right? And so I'm like, man, this pissed me off, you know? And so I said, you know, I got to thinking, I've done 90 or better on B8s in 5 seconds or less quite a few times at 25. So I was like, how can I do that, but I can't do 6 shots without them being all over the freaking place in 3 seconds, you know? Because that's essentially the same sort of time parameter, right? Like it's not that big of a difference. So I said, man, I'm gonna visualize a B8 in the center of the Alpha, and so I did that. I'm pretty good at visualizing stuff, and I literally just visualized a B8 in the center of the Alpha and acted like I was trying to hit the center of the Alpha, and I got a freaking all Alpha apple-sized group in like 2.89, and so like to me, I perceive that there's something going on with how accurate I am really fast now. I think that's the there's something to the speed part of this, right? Because I don't feel the same way if you give me all the time in the world, right? Like all the time in the world, I'm focused on target. I'll shift back to dot. I'll float over. Like I can tell that I'm like quantifying everything that I'm seeing, prep, bang, right? But if you say, Mark, I need you to do this in 3 seconds or less, like or some sort of arbitrary time, I find that if I don't pick a specific spot and mentally fight to stay sucked into it, I'll start just shooting at the shape or the color of the target instead of that particular spot. So that's what I got on it. Go ahead.
So there's a lady that did a bunch of research. I don't know her first name's Joan.
Vickers.
I think it's Vickers, but I'm
Dr. Joan Vickers.
yeah. So she talks heavily about like the quiet eye, and that's sounds very similar to what you're describing, which is a level of some guys talk about it as like flow state and that kind of stuff, where attention really narrows to the only thing that I'm worried about in the world is what I'm doing right in front of me, or hey, I'm really working on this part time, and that's the only thing that matters. And so as that,
there's something psychologically that occurs with narrowing the gaze.
Right.
Yeah.
And so doing so, the eyes are like, they're naturally lazy. And so they'll get away with whatever we allow them to. And so just like any other muscle in the body, I'm not sitting up straight because I don't have to, but if you told me, okay, yeah, I can straighten it up. And so the piece of the laziness factor comes in with, if the eyes are allowed to look at a whole picture and just gaze at it and not put effort in, they will. And so if they're looking at the whole entity of the picture or seeing, the dot in the window and the whole USPSA target versus just the letter A in the center of the A zone, dialing in that refined attention or, detailed focus, however you want to word it. I think that will yield in better results, just because you're holding yourself to a higher standard, or it's instead of getting away with what you can, it's seeing everything that you can instead of just enough.
Right. So a refined, I mean, like
Yes.
really, if we dumb it all down, it's just you're picking out a certain spot to have a refined aiming point instead of aiming at the target or aiming at the alpha or aiming at the upper thoracic, or like you're literally picking out a shirt button size spot, and that by default will create a less egregious miss due to a technical error. For me at and folks at my level, like it's I feel like, man, I have gotten to the point, and I don't know if it's just if it has anything to do with target focus or if it has everything to do with just I'm paying more attention now. 2 things happened. I started really diving into the target focus thing, but I wanted to refine that deeper than just saying target focus, right? I wanted to say, no, just pick a spot in this target, not just focus on this target. in doing so, I have been able to produce results that I have never seen before on as far as me, right? Like I've never been able to shoot as quickly at, partial targets, 15, 20 yards away as I can now. And I'm learning to trust that because like, man, I have found that as long as I will like gaze my eyeballs through that spot, like really trying to burn a hole through it, like Superman vision, those daggum bullets will likely be very close to where I'm looking. But if I allow my vision to float and to observe everything that's going on, then it's just what I feel like, right? I feel like I will say that the first shot's always pretty good, but the second one's liable to be anywhere in the dot recoil pattern, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I feel like and that's when you go more dot focused, quote unquote, versus target focused. Would you agree with that? Or you're dot distracted?
That's a great way to say it. I'm paying more attention to the dot than where I'm actually trying to shoot. And so I'm interested in, like, am I actually shifting focus to the dot, or am I just breaking my mental discipline of paying attention to that spot?
I would say the latter. So if you're focusing on the dot, it should bloom and get blurry because you're now focused at the gun.
Oh, snap. That's pretty profound. Okay. Yep.
So it's just a mental change of so say the same thing. If I'm looking at a picture on the wall and there's 10 people standing there and I look at each one of their faces, my eyes aren't focusing necessarily to a closer distance or at something different. I'm just looking at something different in the photo. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a depth change or a focus change in the eyes. It's an attention change or gaze change to what in the picture am I putting the most effort into.
Can you in layman's terms define or extrapolate on what a gaze change is?
A gaze change is, looking at something different.
Okay.
Transition. That's a gaze change. So there's two ways to change that. That's one, I'm looking straight ahead. Now I change my gaze to another place, or target A to target B to target C, or I'm looking at something far away and then I change my gaze to look at something up close. So there's depth and there's up, down, left, right.
So there was a point where I was chasing 10x on a B8 at 25 for a long time. That was a goal. I wanted to hit 10x on this son of a gun. Let's see what happens with the type of shit.
Which he did, by the way. Shout out my homie.
Thanks, homeboy. And so I was fucking around with a whole bunch of shit during that time, to include, fucking ransom rest the pistol, and as the gun and the bullets even capable of that level of accuracy. If you take me out of the fucking equation, right? Obviously, if the gun can't even do the motherfucker, then there's no way I'm going to be able to do it, right? Without the tool being there. So testing all that, the gun is absolutely capable of shooting, at that point, a Glock 34 with a KKM barrel, and my duty rounds, 10x all day long off the ransom rest, off the bench, right? Pop, pop, power there. And okay, my shit's zeroed. I'm good. It's got to be, any misses now are on me, right? Because the gun is capable of doing the shit. So I start fucking with that a little bit, trying to make this happen. And one of the things that I did on an occasion was take an orange pasty that was just slightly smaller than the X-ring and stuck that some gun right in the middle of the X-ring. Sent the target out. Now I have a very clear focal point within the sea of black out there that I could come out and put the dot on and know I'm right on top of that. And I zeroed it at 25, obviously, right? I'm right on top of that son of a gun. Now, as long as my wobble zone stays within that as I'm pressing the trigger and doing my shit, then I should likely be hitting some fucking X's. And I didn't shoot much tighter with that. Same thing printing V8s, where I change the X-ring to be a white X versus black. I got the exact same results. Go back to the full 9-ring and in being black, and all of a sudden, I wasn't shooting shitty, but I'm not shooting as tight when I had that hard focus thing going on. So I think a chunk of this is having that refined thing to put the dot in. Again, it's a slow fire, not speed shit. So I'm putting that sucker out there, doing my shit, and I'm absolutely seeing it. Now, based on so there's a couple things that I want you to hit on then, and that is, I sent Mark a picture of some dude. He's the Olympic bullseye or world champion bullseye man. And I was specifically looking for a gun with a red dot. And there's a bunch of those guys that only use irons. But he's doing the traditional, handing Napoleon bullshit in his jacket and one-handed and sideways. And he's got a red dot on, and he's wearing them fucking glasses and this whole eyeball is covered. His left eye is completely covered, which means he's only looking through that scope with the right eye. Which tells me then if this dude is competing on that pure accuracy piece at the highest levels in the world, then he's got to be doing some dot focusing in there, right? And so as you just mentioned that, I was pointing my pistol at you here on the dang old thing, and I have the luxury of having progressive glasses on, so I can close this eyeball, look through my glass, through the glass of the optic, and set my progressive range. So you are absolutely clearly in focus, and my dot stays the same size. If I switch it to where my dot is focused and you are out, the dot doesn't get any bigger and doesn't flare. It just always stays consistent. And this is a 3.25 dot, if that matters to you. And so maybe hit on those two things. Why are the Olympic dudes covering the eye and looking through optics and obviously being very fucking accurate with what they're doing? And my presumption is they're being at that level, and somewhere along the way, some science is coming into this shit, because we all about winning them gold medals up in this bitch, where some really smart fellas said, this is the way you fucking do it, man. If you want to be successful in this arena at this level, you're going to close that motherfucking eye and look through that tube, and they're looking at something. So what I don't know is, are they looking at the target through the glass like I am able to do just now when I picked my gun up and aimed at you, or are they constantly doing that focal shift thing? Target's good to go, dot's in the middle, target, dot, back and forth. And then while they're doing that, it's press, and trying to break that shot without disturbing anything. And who the fuck knows where their eyes are at the moment that they let go of that shot? Does that make sense?
Yep. So the piece on why to occlude or cover one eye for the Olympic guys, when they're not out moving around and walking around and trying to see everything in the environment like you would at work, it's just visual clutter. Like, there is very little that your non-dominant eye is doing for you when shooting or aiming, besides helping you to have peripheral vision. And the peripheral vision for them doesn't matter. They don't want the distraction. It's like blinders on a horse. What matters is right in front of you. And what matters is the sights and the target. And your non-dominant eye is only seeing the target. It's not doing any of the sights. So it's just creating, like, so it's like you take a person who's never looked at pistol sights before and you say, okay, line the sights up. The first thing they're going to do is close one eye. Right. And that's because they're going to see, okay, if I see one front sight and then I focus my eyes and they converge on that front sight, well, now there's two rear sights that popped up. One of them's in line and one of them's off to the side. And then, oh man, the target looks a little different too. And when they do that, they go, wow, that's a lot to look at. And you close an eye because it's just less clutter. So they're cleaning up their sight picture by only using one eye. And they're not worried about the other, hey, I've got to be paying attention to where I'm going to transition to next, that kind of thing.
I got that, right? And again, both eyes open is the way to go. Target focused is the way to go. There's no disputing that. My question to you then is there some accuracy only benefit? That's the only thing we're gauging right now, is how accurate can I be? Would there be a benefit to closing an eye and looking through the red dot on your pistol with just your dominant eye? Take away all the clutter. Again, it's a very refined question about accuracy only.
Yeah. I would go, I think that's to be determined. I don't think I can say for sure. There was a study done where they were measuring people's vision, and they say, hey, I'm going to cover one eye, read me those letters. And then they're going to do the same thing, but now I want you to keep both eyes open. I'm just going to make this side blurry, so where you can't see out of it, and then tell me, and they would read slightly better with like contrast sensitivity and very fine, detail-oriented vision, so accuracy-based. People would read slightly better when they had both eyes open. And there's a thing called binocular summation. When we have both eyes working together, the brain likes that better. That's why we're designed with both eyes, with two eyes. And so they do a little better when they work as a team, even if one side isn't seeing clearly, than they do individually. But I think that in some ways you're going to gain visual clutter by having both eyes open, and other ways you're going to get binocular summation. So there's pros and cons to both. I think it partially depends on who you are, what your eye prescription is, if both eyes see evenly, if one's better than the other, that kind of stuff, how the eyes work as a team, if you have any binocular vision problems. And then the other piece of that is how many reps have you done either way. For the guy who's done 10,000 reps of one eye closed, he's going to feel more comfortable like that and be more precise like that. And the guy who's done 10,000 reps with his eyes open is going to feel more comfortable that way. So there's a learned piece to it, and I think the science could support both.
Do you think that there is anything to be said? So Bill asked me, and I'm just interested in what thought pops into your head when I say this. Bill asked me, he said, okay, well, and I'm paraphrasing based on what I remember. This is not quoted, but he said something to the effect of, have you ever considered that maybe that's just you and what you do, because what vision do you have? And the answer is, last time I was checked, it was 2015. And he said, okay, well, maybe you just got better eyes than most, and you're doing stuff that you perceive to be normal, but maybe it ain't normal. Maybe it's just for you. So like, does the quality of vision affect what you ought to be looking at in this environment?
And right before this, I texted Tim Herron and asked him, and he's 2015 as well. And I just posted a thing on Facebook asking my GM friends what their vision is, if they know. And I guess the better question would have been is, what was your vision when you achieve GM? Because I think Mark Smith will be valid as a GM even as he gets older and his eyesight starts to grade, if it does. I don't know what his genetics in his family is, but if he went to 2020 and got progressively worse over the years, but my guess is his gun handling experience would carry him through some eyesight issues. But I'm curious, when dudes achieve GM, it would be interesting to see what percentage of those dudes are seeing better than normal or better than average at the moment they achieve that rank. Does that make sense?
Like the average visual acuity potential, or 2020, 2015 for the Major League Baseball is like 2012. That's average for those guys. So same thing, like you're saying, when they're trying to, pick up, they got, I think it's 0.4 seconds for a 90-mile-an-hour fastball to decide, am I going to start a swing? Am I not? Am I going to do whatever, right? And so to be successful to that level, it self-selects people that see to that level.
It's interesting you brought that up. My brother played Major League Baseball for 9 years. And I remember talking to him about this shit, right? And some of them, the speed of some of those fastballs and this and that. And I remember having this conversation, and it wasn't anything to do about shooting or anything else. But I was like, man, how do you make that decision and get the bat where it needs to be at to hit the ball? And he's like, man, he goes, the best way he goes, I can see the seams, whether it's a fastball or if it's a curveball, based on how that ball is rotating. I can physically see the seams. And I said, okay, you mean like you see like a red swirl going, right? Or something. He goes, no, motherfucker, I see the seams. I can see how that ball is laced. And I remember thinking, holy fuck, I ain't never seen no Major League Baseball player neither. But he said it with conviction, and I have since heard other Major League Baseball players that are hitting at a high level say the exact same thing. It's not just I see the ball coming and a red swirl happening. I can see those fucking laces as that ball is doing what it does. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's stunning vision. Now, it could be a learned thing as well, right? And Mark and I were talking with Frank Proctor class, right? But he wants you to see faster, and he's got some drills that he'll do in class. I ain't going to put him in my ear. You ain't been to Frank's class, go to his class. But some shit, and I remember like for the first time seeing some of the shit that he was talking about, but it took a couple of reps, and I was like, oh fuck, look at that type of thing, right? Now, and maybe because I was looking for it. So I think some of it can be learned, but I am curious about the genetic predisposition for some dudes that just have better fucking eyeballs than some motherfuckers. The same way some dudes with better reflexes are going to be better at certain sports than dudes that are more sloth-like. And so it's an interesting conversation to me. That's all. What's your thoughts on that shit?
Yep. I agree. I think that I've heard the same thing, and there's a lot of like professional baseball players that use, they do sports vision training, and they train their eyes to get them as, they're going to make the most out of what they got. And I think that that's something that, as we talk about it in the shooting realm, so part of that is like, if I stood up to bat and I know nothing about baseball, and I'm standing there going, okay, I'm going to hit. There's a dude on first base, and there's a pretty girl in center field, and there's blah, blah, blah. There's daisies in the field. I'm not paying attention. And I go, oh, here comes the pitch. And I start paying attention. Versus Mark steps up and he goes, okay, this pitcher releases like right about his armpit. So my eyes are locked on the armpit. And as the ball comes by there, that's a very different visual experience or level of attention that he's paying. and it's going to end in different results. So I think the same thing is true for us shooting, of going, hey, okay, hey, we're going to put a target out there, you shoot the target. And if you hand that to your 10-year-old kid, they're going to look across the field and see there's something there that I'm supposed to aim at, versus somebody saying, no, there's an orange dot in the center of the B8. Those two things are queuing us up for a different level of attention to pay towards the task that we're doing.
So I think the portion of go ahead, Mark.
So all right, so I got let's say I got dicked up vision, right? I'm all goofed up. Can you make people have 20/20 vision? Can you make people have 20/15 vision? Like what is the limit of corrective lenses?
Well, shameless plug, of course. That's what I do all day long. No, I'm kidding. It depends on the eyeball. Yeah, come see me. That's like you got to go to Frank Proctor's class for that. You got to come see me for that. No.
Good night, Joe.
No, it's twofold. So majority of the population can see 20/20. That means, and that's what 20/20 means, is that you can see something 20 feet away, that somebody else can see something 20 feet away. So that means you're on par with majority of the human population. 20/15 means that you can see something at 20 feet that I'm going to have to lean into 15 feet to be able to see. It means you see a little better than most people. And so majority of people can achieve 20/20 when they use both eyes together. Quite a few people, if they don't have other signs of disease or problems, can see 20/15.
Why do they call it 20/15? Why don't they just call it 15?
Because it's setting a threshold. So we can also, like, if you go to Europe and get this done, they'll call it 6/6 because they do it in meters, not feet. So it's saying, hey, you compared to, it's 1-to-1 is basically what we're saying.
Okay. All right. So it's not one eye is at one level, the other eye is at another level, because I always thought that.
Correct. Nope. You'll get a 20/20 and a 20/20, or 20/20, 20/15.
Man, I always thought like my dominant eye was the 15 eye. I was all dicked up. Okay.
Look at that, you learned something, man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I feel like that's another big thing that for me as a personal like irk, as people talk about, oh, they compare this dot to that dot and how clean this one is or how much better that one is. I'm like, what can you even see? Like, they're listening to people who are saying, well, this dot's better than that dot. I'm like, yeah, but you're probably walking around. That's the same person who goes, well, I want to train well like I fight, so I don't wear glasses when I shoot because I'm not going to have them on in the fist fight. Like, okay, I'll lawyer that because that's going to go well. But
yeah, don't you're pro either while you're shooting.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyways, that's a personal beef. But a lot of people can see really well. There's different ways to achieve that, whether it's glasses, contact lenses, if you don't naturally have that without any correction in front of you.
Okay. Well, so all right. So does eye dominance play into this at all? Like if you're super duper, like it's, and this is, I imagine, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine like my dad. My dad is ambidextrous. Son of a gun, can write in cursive with either hand. Like it don't matter. Like he can throw a football either hand. It's super weird. Like good. Like it ain't like he could just make it go a certain amount. Like you couldn't tell if he was left or right-handed if you watched him throw a baseball. I cannot do that with everything. I can use my left hand pretty good for most things, but not to the level that he can. Is there such a thing as like, just like some people are like my little boy, man, that rascal is right-handed. Like he can't do nothing left-handed. Like he sucks at everything left-handed. You know, he does one-arm push-ups because of it. I'm just kidding. But is there such a thing with eye dominance where some people are extremely one-eye dominant? Some people are, well, I just kind of use both, and then there's everybody in between. And how does that play into what you're perceiving while you're shooting?
Definitely. So the ambidextrous, ambiocular is a thing, but yes, 100%. Some people who are really one-eye dominant, whether that's the same side as their dominant hand or whether that's cross-dominant, there is a spectrum to that. And I think that does lead to people landing in different spots of, hey, what's the best way for me to use my eyes when shooting? If either of you know Gabe White, he is a perfect example of that. Go to his website, check out his article on it. But he has unique eyes, and that has led him to shooting irons and focusing where he does and all that kind of stuff because of his eyes.
But he learned that over time just by doing. Is that? Yeah.
He's yes. Yep.
So a thing, a phenomenon that manifests. So I am left-handed. I do everything left-handed except for shoot a pistol. I am right-eye dominant. I have always shot long guns with my left eye, right? Just because I ain't trying to get my head over there type of bullshit. A thing, and again, very early adopters of red dots on rifles and this and that. And so as I'm teaching at the basic SWAT school for the state and that type of shit, I'm starting to introduce these fellows into two-eye open shooting and all this kind of crap. And with the rifle, the easy thing to do to include the dot was just close the front scope cap, right? So we'd close it up, and I say, hey man, keep both eyes open, see the thing, do the thing, all this kind of shit. And I noticed that some fellas, we go up and check targets, and they have a nice group, but it's shifted to the left or to the right of center when it's occluded. And they'd be like, what the fuck? And I go, man, your zero's off, right? Something happened. Your shit loose. I'm shaking crap and this and that other thing. And everything looked fine. So I was like, okay, well, let's recheck your zero. I have to open the cap. They shoot the motherfucker centered again, right? So I started noticing over time, some people are affected. Now, what I didn't do, a question you could probably answer, is I was not tracking were they weirdos like me. Does that make sense? So as they occluded that lens with the left eye, but they're right eye dominant dudes, was that doing something to shift the group based on how they were perceiving where the dot was in the middle of the target? Now, I don't do that, right? And maybe that's why I never tracked it, because for me, that I can occlude the dot on my rifle and shoot dead center all fucking day long, as long as I do my part, of course. And so, I mean, how does that work? And Mike and I were just talking about this the other day with pistol shit, where some guys, if you take their lens, all of a sudden that group wants to shift somewhere, take the tape off, and they're back to center on the Sundays, right? So as a training tool, covering the thing to force them to run both eyes. I caught a guy this last week, and he's squinching an eye with no tape on his shit, right? So, hey, man, you got to be shooting this thing with both eyes open for all of the discrimination reasons and situational awareness piece. But what's the science on that shit?
Yeah. So when we what one eye is seeing, and then we try to point both eyes to the same place. One eye seeing the dot, one eye seeing the target. It depends on the person as to how big of a deal this is, and this goes back to the lazy conversation. The eyes, when they're pointed to the same place, if they're pointed slightly different places, the brain's going to go, whoa, I see two bills across the room, or I see two whatever. Brain doesn't like that, so it's either going to shut one eye off and say, don't listen to that eye, or it's going to straighten the eyes up to where they get back to seeing together. And so when we show the eye dissimilar images, so like the right eye sees a red dot in a black window and the left eye sees the target, that we call it dissociated conditions, which is like when we test one eye at a time. When you are only working with one eye, the other eye it's not seeing the same thing, so the brain doesn't mandate that, hey, you got to stay in line with each other. That other eye can drift just a little bit because it's not required to stay locked onto what the other eye is doing. And so for majority of people, that will cause a shift towards their let's see. So I'll have to think about this for a minute as to which it should be, because it's cross diplopia is what we call it. But anyways.
Spell that word.
Huh?
Spell that.
He's throwing his big doctor dick all over the place on us now. Look at him.
Oh, that's right.
And you're throwing firemen out there, so I'm gonna flex when I can too. I'll be doing this for a minute. Anyways, so that will cause generally a horizontal shift in what people are seeing, because now the eye that sees the dot is just looking at the dot, and the other eye is not required to stay as locked in or teamed to pay attention to the same exact thing, because the brain can't tell if you're seeing double or not at that time because you're not looking at the same thing with each eye.
So what would you say makes, man, when I occlude the dot, as of right now, right, based on the training I've been doing for the past 3 months and really working on this target focus thing and this, that, and the other, it seems that when I occlude the dot, I objectively shoot better. So like, what is that? Like, explain that to me based on the information that I've given you over the past hour now.
I think it goes back to the visual clutter conversation, because it's like when you have both eyes open, you're really the second eye, your non-dominant eye, the one that's not looking through the sights, is not doing a whole lot of good for you when all your attention should be on what's the dot relationship to the target. That other eye is not doing anything good for you in that period of time. And so I think when you isolate it and say, hey, all you're seeing is the red dot and all you're seeing is a target. And I only got one image of a target, and there's not both eyes competing for that. I think that's where it makes things easier or seem cleaner.
Makes it easier to stay focused on that narrow gaze point of focus.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, so I got another one for you. I hope you ain't got to go to bed no time soon. I got a whole mess of these in my head.
You're the host.
So I've had men occlude the dot with a rifle before. So interesting, just like Bill just said, I'm a cross-eye dominant pistol shooter. I'm left-eye dominant, and so I bring the pistol over to my left eye, but I shoot right-handed rifle. Now, I think there's something to be said with just time on task, and over the years, like, so a lot of guys ask me, man, how do you keep both eyes open when you look through a magnified optic? Like, it don't matter if it's 1x, 3x, 18x, I'm both eyes open, and it literally, to me, is perceived as though the eye that's not looking through a scope just shuts down and doesn't see anything. That seems strange to me, being that I'm left eye dominant. It seems that the dominant eye would be fighting to get a picture of something, you know, or whatever, but it's now, it just ain't seeing nothing. I don't perceive anything weird whatsoever shooting rifle right-handed with my right eye, which is my non-dominant eye, looking through the dot. But I have covered the optic of certain people, right? And this is a very rare occurrence. This has happened now 3 times in the past, 10 classes, where a man will occlude his dot and attempt to shoot at a target and literally not hit it a single time. And I'm talking about from 10 yards all the way to 50, right? You take that tape off, he starts hitting again. So like, and I ask him, like, are you seeing double target? Or he said, no, I don't know. I'm seeing, like, I don't know. So like, what's happening there where this dude is literally not able to hit a 10-yard silhouette, but he sees good, like his brain's telling him this is good, go, but there's nothing.
Yeah. So it's that same level of, if we're looking this eye's behind the gun and this eye's behind, just looking at the target, and then we block this eye, so now it's occluded. The eyes are no longer seeing the same thing, and everybody's eyes are going to drift a little differently. For majority of people, it's going to stay, inside of, let's call it 5 degrees. So it'll still land on a target. It's just going to have a shift. But there's a certain percentage of the population that once the eyes are no longer required to stay straight, one's going to go further, let's call it. It may not go all the way out to the guy you see at the bar that he's looking here and he's looking here. But,
goofy son of a gun. Yeah, I got it.
But his eyes are drifting further than most, to the point where it's off paper.
That is wild to me. Like, so you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that some people, and there's nothing, would it be correct to say there's nothing this man can do to accommodate that? Like, that's just the way his eyes are.
Yeah. I mean,
so his crap is like this. Like,
so think of it this way. When he relaxes, his eyes go like that. They're pointed out here. And when you both,
I knew something was wrong with it when I say.
When you have both eyes working together, like world, and you go, hey, he's looking at a target with both eyes. He strengthens up and goes, okay, shoot, I got to keep it straight. And then as soon as you have one eye to relax, and that's what you're saying, and when you occlude the optic is relax, then he drifts back to this.
That's trippy.
That's what leads. So the bend and aiming concept is a no-go for that dude.
Huh.
Wow.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. So there's a couple things, right? I've been interested in vision for a long time, not necessarily on the shooting side of the house, but mistake of fact shootings and why did officers see this and what, how did you not see this motherfucker pulling a gun out, bro? It was right there in front of you type of shit, right? I remember in the shoot house years ago, in my range, we could turn it into an indoor shoot house, and there were spotlights all the way down in different fronts, so I could adjust the lighting and do my shit and all this kind of crap. And center fed door, there's a USPSA target, maybe, 8 to 10 feet right in the dead center, right? So as you enter the fucking room, it's right the goddamn hell there. And I'm watching my teammates come in, and they're going to the corner, and then they collapse a second, like, oh, fuck, there's this motherfucker right there. And they both shoot this dude, right? And I'm like, hey, motherfucker, what the fuck, dude? How did you not see that until you started to collapse your sector? And I go, I don't know. Well, it dawned on me what they're doing is they're so worried about the corner, and they're snapping it so fast that they're losing the center of the room when they make entry, right? And so the fixer has A, maybe more reps, but B, also potentially slow down your roll a little bit so that you can see your way to the corner and actually perceive what's going on. And then there's a dude named Derek Bartlett who wants sniper craft, whatever. Some of y'all hate him, whatever. I ain't the point of this shit, but he put out a video, and you've probably seen this shit, right? And there's a team of basketball players. There's 5 dudes in white shirts and 5 dudes in black shirts, and they're passing the ball pretty aggressively around, and you can see all of them doing their shit. And he says, keep your eye on the ball as the white team passes around. That's what you are intended to do during this video clip. And of course, a gorilla walks in the middle of the fucking screen, does this bullshit, shakes his ass, and then walks off, right? And then he's like, who saw the gorilla? And you're like, gorilla? What the fuck are you talking about with the gorilla? It was right the fuck there, right? So there's some perception shit. With that in mind, Mark and I teaching together. He has taught me some shit and doing some. So I've done shot calling exercises before, probably not at the same level that Mark teaches it and that he has had me do in the class and that kind of shit. And I am pretty good at shot calling, right? At least in the times that I've done it with Mark, and 2 rounds, and then right here's the thing. And I've seen Mark do, I've seen other fellows do this shit. If I am focused on the target as hard as you're saying, then how can I go pop, 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 and say those are all within this range? And Mark's ruler, South Carolina ruler, size of a dip can, right? And be able to say those are here, those are here, those are here, those are here. If I am not paying attention to the fucking dots. So is it just peripheral vision and my brain is cataloging it was there roughly when I pulled the fucking trigger, or am I doing a focal shift right as I'm discharging the shot, or maybe right after it? I'm talking split second shit here, where I'm seeing the target, the shot goes, and my brain goes, the dot was right there and there it left. Does that make sense? And that allows me to, or aids me in shot calling to some degree, or is it all just perception based on where I saw it land and or come off the target? Because those are fast splits. This ain't no bullshit pow thing. It's pow 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 pow.
Before you answer that, Josh, I'll tell you exactly what I perceive. I'm boring a hole in the target, and I'm peripherally aware of where the dot is in time and space. It's not that I'm ever actually looking at it. I just saw it over here, or I saw it over there.
So it's a guess, is what you're saying.
I don't think it's a. I don't think it would. I don't think it's a.
I didn't mean that like a smart ass.
Huh?
I didn't mean that like a smart ass. I'm just.
No.
Guess might be the wrong word.
I'm not guessing. I mean, the same way if I were looking at you and your wife came in with a flashlight and walked behind you, like I would be able to tell that went at ear line right behind your head. Like, even though I'm looking at you, I saw it, right? Like I'm not looking at the thing, but I saw it when it happened.
And my example of exactly what you're saying with the basketball team and the gorilla shit, which probably everybody's fucking seen if you haven't Googled that shit, it's right there. But the vast majority of people don't see the gorilla because they're so focused on this basketball being passed around. Is it not the same concept?
Did I ever tell you about me getting Brittany to write words on the targets?
I think so, yeah.
So here's something super interesting that plays into this, Josh. I was talking to JJ Racaza, and he said to me, man, I think people think that they are target focused, but they're not as target focused as they think they are. And he said, go out here and do this, this, and this. And I was like, man, I can't do that. But what I can do is I can do this. So I went out and I set up the accelerator, right? Target at 5, target at 15, target at 25 in a line. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to set this barrel here. I'm going to do an unloaded start. So I'm not going to draw while I'm looking at a target. I'm going to be looking at the gun, beep, and shoot. I want you to take this super fat construction Sharpie, and I want you to write 3-letter words on these targets, big, giant, bold freaking word. I'm talking like 10 inches high letters, like massive words. And they can be whatever words you want, just whatever 3-letter word, you know what I mean? And dude, the buzzer went off and I shot that thing. And not only could I not tell you what the words were, I could, and so like as soon as I'm done shooting it, I'd look away, right? So that way I can't quantify what happened here, what I saw.
Quick question. Dots or iron?
Dot gun. Yeah, dot gun. Not only could I not tell you what the letters were or what the words were, I couldn't even with like certainty tell you what targets had letters on them. Like I wasn't even sure of that. So that is what led me down the road of like, man, what am I actually looking at? You know what I mean? Because like if I'm hard target focused, I should be able to notice giant black bold letters and maybe even read them, but I couldn't do that. And then I also told her, I said, don't necessarily write a word on every target, right? You can write a word on one target, you can write a word on two targets, whatever you want to do. And let me tell you, man, one of the words was sex. And if I'm going to see a word, I'm going to see some sex, right? I didn't see it. I got nothing, right? So speak to that a little bit as far as the shot calling and what you're looking at. And I didn't see those letters and all this kind of stuff.
So the visual cortex is the part of your brain that processes vision, and that's what the eyes plug into. 50% of the visual cortex is corresponded to our central 20 degrees of vision. And so that's like this wide. What's in front of you right here, that's a central 20 degrees-ish. This half of that, your central degrees of vision. So a quarter of your visual processing center of your brain is wired for what you see really close to straight ahead. And so there's a lot of brain power available if you choose to use it. And so I think, Bill, going back to when you're like, hey, how am I catching this even when it's quick? It's not necessarily peripheral vision as I think of it. I think of peripheral vision being out here. Oh, okay, now I can see it. This is still central vision, even if it's, say let's a USPSA target at 25. That's all central vision in this definition. And so the brain has the ability to, it's got plenty of processing power to see whatever's going on that if you lock your attention into to say that's what I want to know, or that's what I want to track. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Mark has told me about that before, and maybe this is partly what started spooling, more to think about this shit. Maybe this was just one more addition, which made me think, is Mark, he's boring a hole in that target, but at the moment he's firing the shot, in this case where he's quickly coming up and shooting, does he think he's looking at the fucking target, or does he actually shift his focus to the dot, which would make seeing and reading those letters a harder task?
Right. I think it's the gorilla thing where he, in that moment, is going heavily dot focused, and partially that could have been the time frame where he's going, oh, I don't have the same, hey, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to stare at the target, and then I'm going to draw to it, because you were, doing an unloaded start, looking down, and quick glance to the target, okay, put the dot where it needs to go. I think that he would have been more dot distracted, heavily dot. That's where your attention is on the dot, not on what the target's doing.
And it may be important to note this was all completely prior to this whole revelation and this exploratory journey I've been on with target focus. This was back before I thought anything about any of this, right? And so I'm interested, and actually I'll do this maybe tomorrow or the next day. I'll go set that up again now that I've been training target focus for so long, and see if there's a perceivable difference, right?
Be careful though that you don't, that now that you know this, that you're not wasting time to read the thing and then shoot.
I ain't gonna no time, baby. I'm fixing to pull out a 2-second run. It's going down.
So I mean, you should have, if you have data from those old runs or what you're
I do. I know where I live. I know where I used to live back then, and I know where I live now. And that's what makes this so hard, right? Is that back in the day, man, an all alpha run on accelerator. This is just shooting the 3 targets, no reloaded, shooting them again like it's typically done. I was always right around 2.75, 3 seconds for all alpha. These days, I'm more in the 2 second to 2.25 range. And so, but that doesn't mean that is because of I'm target focused now, and I used to not be or anything. I mean, this is a year ago, right? So I'm a better shooter now than I was a year ago. So like, there's that part of it too, which makes this so hard to quantify.
Yeah, I notice if it on the super slow fire BA, right? Got all the time there. I know I am going back and forth, right? I'm watching that dot.
I do too.
All that kind of shit. Mark and I, as we were talking about this a little bit, I did a drill that I called the hat trick years ago, just shooting 3 B8s in less than 20 seconds, trying to score 90 on all of them. Only 8 ringing in hits count, right? And so as I was training up for that, I'm trying to break the drill down and do it in segments and chunks. And I mean, obviously, if I can't shoot a B8 at 25 and 6.25 seconds based on my draw time and my reload times, I will never be able to accomplish this task. So I don't need to run 3 B8s in a row. I just got to be able to do one after another consistently. And then as long as my reloads and shit come together, I should be good. I found that when I was doing that, obviously I don't have time to fuck around and go back and forth and do shit. So I'm watching my, y'all dig the dinosaur pen? Pretty cool, right? So my dinosaur dot stays in the middle, and my shit goes up into the right-handed shooter right now. What I found was that I could say it's coming, it's here, whatever. I don't know if I'm actually following it up or not, but I could start to predict it's coming back in now, and I'm firing here. Does that make sense? I'm sending the signal, shoot it, because my hand's still in motion, pow, and then it's going up and doing its shit. There's no way I could have corrected a shitty shot, right? Which is why that makes that drill really fucking hard, because you don't have time to go, oh, that's not quite there, let me adjust it, because you're just running out of fucking time. You don't have the time to mess around with that. As I'm going to classes and teaching them shit, I'll have guys go through a cadence drill, right, where they count in their head 1,000, 2, 1,000. They're going to fire the shot every time they say the number, because it's going to start to show us a pattern of where that dot is going to and how reliably it's returning to where it should be at. And then they go to half second, 1 and 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all this kind of shit, right? But it's a consistent cadence just to see what they're capable of doing and how is their grip coming together and what are they saying and all this kind of bullshit. And I don't know if this is the correct term or not, but then we will shoot the test 10 yards at 10 or 10 rounds at 10 yards. And I'm trying to make this happen as fast as I can, obviously. But the parameter I put them is you must get it done in 7 fucking seconds, right? So that's a pretty fast, spicy run for a lot of dudes. And so what I'm able to do then is the shit's going away, and I start doing the same thing where it's here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. And I notice that when I get into a rhythm, right, once everything's clicking, I can start to make that shit go faster because it's reliably coming back into it. And so, and I'll show it to them, right? Listen to the fucking cadence now. Pop, 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 and I finish up and then hit the shot timer, right? It's whatever the fuck it is. I'd say for simple shit, it's a 45 split, then a 43, then a 40, then a 38, and it's all the, you know what I mean? I'm reducing that as the shit goes on. So some of that, as I'm shooting that drill, I am very much aware of where the dot is in relation to the target, because the other thing they have to do is score 95 fucking points. It's not just keep it in the 8 ring for me. You got to score 95 out of 100 fucking points, which means there's got to be some level of sight refinement occurring to at least try to keep them in the fucking black before I press the trigger. Otherwise, I'll never make the fucking points shooting that quick. And so a lot of this is what has me thinking about. I know I'm looking at the fucking B8 for some of it, but I think I got to be verifying the dot is where it needs to be, even when I am shooting what is a fast drill for me. Right? And I ain't doing doubles on shit and, you know, trying to get a big ass A zone and you know, red on brown and send it type of shit. This has to be a little bit more refined than that. Or am I just fucking crazy as shit and this is all just me being comfortable running the gun based on what I can do with my grip and this and that, the other thing, and that's just where it comes back to every fucking time. And it has been a long time since I have failed that fucking drill, even at my own personal standard, which is right now is less than 5 seconds to score 95.
I think that you have shot that gun so many times the same way that you can reliably predict what is about to happen faster than you visually.
What am I seeing, though, man? What am I seeing? That's the thing. Right?
But I don't think that at the speed you're talking about, I mean, you're talking about at least 0.4 splits to do 5 seconds or less, at least. I think that is enough time to get the flash of color and go, yes, boom, yes, boom, yes, boom, yes, boom, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely not a problem there and me going, yep, that's good to go, right? I mean, I'm not definitely not.
But I don't think necessarily that if that dot were to do something completely unusual, completely out of character, completely unexpected, and go hard left all of a sudden over to the 8 ring, I don't know that you are visually and there's enough time for you to visually say, yes, it's over there, I should move it over here, move it, then bang, right? I feel like you just like with shot calling, you know that wasn't a good one because you're processing it after it already occurred, but it's a very fast processing. But I know that when I shoot my fastest stuff, I'm not going to say it has nothing to do with vision, but it really does feel like it's just, I'm like shooting doubles, right? Like the doubles drill is a great example of this. Like to maintain all alpha back to 25 yards with a pistol at 0.25 or less splits, I can't do anything about what I saw or what I'm seeing right now. I've already decided to shoot, right? I've made the decision to shoot that second shot before I've ever even shot it, regardless of what the sight looks like. but I can call it afterwards. Like I know whether or not it was good after it happened. But at the same time, if I close my eyes, I can't do that. Right. So it's very interesting to me how I don't perceive that I'm using any visual power to accomplish this, but I also can't do it with my eyes closed.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I get the academic part of this is who gives a fuck, right?
What are we even doing?
I'm shooting at 95 in 5 fucking seconds, man. Right?
Yeah.
Does it matter? And I guess the only thing that matters to me is I'm just curious about what is really occurring within my brain. Correct. And how my brain sees what it needs to see, and what am I really doing? And I guess on the student side of the house, if we can explain that better, then maybe there's a shorter learning curve for guys that are trying to figure this out.
Correct.
Versus wasting a bunch of fucking ammunition like we have done trying to get whatever the fuck we're trying to do there. If that makes any sense.
In response to Colt 45 Irish 90, he said, change the gun and see if it changes.
I have.
Speaking on the doubles drill specifically, so doubles, for those that are unaware, that is, I'm going to fire 2 shots at a point. I'm going to attempt a .20 or less split between those 2 shots, and I'm looking for 10 yards dip can size action. So boom, 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 boom. It absolutely changes based on the gun, but if you give me a magazine worth of that gun, I'll be doing it again, right? I can start to predict what the gun's behavior is, so on and so forth.
I mean, listen,
right?
A real shitty ass gun, right? Horrible trigger and shit like that. I'll know some crap, but it will take more work. I also saw this question about change the power of the ammo. I mean, it's all 9mm, but I've gone from 115 to 124 plus piece, 147s. I mean, different recoil impulse, and it does.
So that will change the behavior of the gun, but it doesn't change my once again, like if I change ammo, if I start shooting 115, like you got to give me a magazine worth to kind of feel out what's going on here, because it is behaving differently.
So Zane just put up, he wrote predictive shooting, which is what we call it, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Rhythm shooting is what I call it, whatever the hell, it's the same fucking concept. But in the class I just taught in Chicago, running this drill, I think portion of it is that there is time, as you said, it's like 0.4, 0.38 splits. If I can make that, I'm going to easily make that fucking time type of shit. Well, I saw myself chuck an 8-ring. Does that make sense? I seen it. And so I had to have been target focused at that moment to know that that's where the bullet fucking went. And I had the time then to bring everything back to center. So that may be a good example of, I was looking at the target, saw the 8-ring appear, and then my brain kicked in and said, check that dot, homie. That wasn't in the right spot. And potentially now I looked at the dot for the next shot to make sure it was back in the fucking middle before I press the trigger. And that drill ain't so spicy that I can't make that happen at 0.4 splits. Does that make sense?
Josh, are we crazy?
Yeah, we're on, Josh. Break it down, doctor.
I think that that's how I planned on this going. Knew you'd be bringing some of that. I feel like the let's call it cone of attention, where you're paying attention to. If you're seeing, hey, this is what the dot's doing, and you open up your attention to see both what the picture, because it's a 2D image that we're talking about, right? Where on the B8 is the dot, and at some point in time when you see it lift, you knew that last picture was your feedback. My question is, could you have changed it, like, oh, this is about to be an 8-ring, nope, drag it back in before?
If you prioritized hitting the center of the B8 over the time it's going to take you to get this drill done, yes, you can.
But staying in the same time frame.
I'm not convinced. So here's what I've found. I've found that 0.25 or less, you cannot affect it. It's going to happen, right? If your splits are 0.25 or less, even closer to 0.3, you don't have the time to quantify the result and change it in that moment, right? If you're up around 0.4, maybe, right? Maybe. So definitely at 0.4, I can send a makeup if I perceive something to go awry. But man, like, I think in order to say, is it center? Yes, it is. Should I shoot? Yes, I should. All right, bang, do it again, right? I think we're in the half-second range to do something like that. For me personally, and I also think it's important to say for me personally, because I think the more a human being does a thing, the faster their processing of that thing becomes, right? So like for me personally, if you want me to shoot a 100 on the test, you're going to have to give me You're going to have to give me 6 seconds to do that. And unless I'm going to shoot it predictively and just get lucky, right? Like it's just going to work out. I'm going to shoot predictably so well that it's just going to work out. But to say, Mark, your children's lives are on the line, you have to shoot a 100 as fast as possible, I don't think I'm going to get out of the sixes.
Question for you
You'll
guys.
be slower than that.
Do what?
Meaning you would be slower than 6
I think I'd be 6 at the most.
with your children's life on the line.
Yeah. Like, no, six at the fastest. At the fastest.
Right.
Like, because I would have to quantify every single shot. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I think that for me, that's going to take me at least a half second to accomplish.
I got you. So 6 or more to guarantee the 100.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
And I think that you know, that all that play. So Bill and I, when we teach, and I do it when I'm by myself too. When I teach the draw, right? So we're talking about the draw. One of the things I want to knock out on the draw before we even get started is, what is a good time? Well, a good time is whatever's faster than your old time, right? And so, like, don't let the internet tell you what is this wall of achievement, right? So, like, everybody always goes, oh, it's sub 1 second, sub 1 second, sub 1 second. Well, that's because they've been told that, right? But what nobody ever talks about is what are the parameters that define success of this dude's drill that was videoed, right? And so meaning, can I do a sub 1 second alpha shot at 7 yards from a competition rig? Yes is the answer, right? But if you tell me, Mark, if you miss this shot, your children will die, that changes how much attention I pay to everything, right? And so I will do this thing where I'll say, all right, y'all, I'm gonna show you this super spicy sub 1 second shot, right? And I did it in Texas last weekend, freaking 0.66 to the doggone alpha, right? In the head box. But then I said, now we're gonna change the definition of success to as fast as you can get it done, but the parameters are gonna change, where if I miss this shot, right, and I have to do this to put myself into this mental zone, if I miss this shot, you all are going to turn on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, right? I'm going to put my pistol up, unload it. That way there's no weird stuff going on. And Bill's going to walk up here and he's going to punch me in the face as hard as he freaking can, right? If I miss this shit, because now what I've done is I've created a consequence. If I miss, there's a consequence, because normally when dudes are doing this, it's, oh, you just shoot at it. If you miss, just tape it up and try again. You know what I mean? But what does it look like when missing's not an option? And in that moment, right? And once again, this is just what I perceive. I can't like prove this. I absolutely feel like I see the dot on target for significantly longer than when I'm just doing the freaking magic trick, right? And so I absolutely feel like I see center of target before the buzzer goes off. Dot comes out, I see it a little bit left, and I get sucked to it, and I put it in the middle, and then I go back to the target, and like there's all this visual like processing going on, and then I boom, right? And I've never missed yet. So like when it matters, or when there is no time standard, right? Because like in that moment, I'm not prioritizing the time, I'm prioritizing the hit. And so when you're doing 25-yard B8 slow fire untimed, my eyes do different stuff than when time is time is of the essence. And so I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Me
I
or
think
Bill?
70 duck.
Yeah. Doc, so number one, I think it's important to say, number one, man, I'm not shortchanging dudes that are standing on this pedestal of sub 1 second draws. I'm not. That's a fantastic feat of human performance. It's cool, all this. All I'm saying is that if you will dry fire correctly and you will dry fire enough, you can get what's called an index down pretty solid, right? So solid, in fact, that I routinely demo for students that I can draw to a C-zone piece of steel from 10 yards away with my eyes closed in 1 second or less. I've done this so many times that all I have to do is visualize a target and I can point a gun at it and hit it. If I can do that, I can likely get away with some magic trick stuff to make you think that I'm actually doing something I may not be doing at 7 yards or less, right? So like I'll turn around after that shot and I'll tell those guys the truth, right? Do you guys know what I saw when that shot went off? Freaking nothing, right? Absolutely nothing. I saw a gun enter the head box, and then I saw a flash of red lift. That's what I saw. right? But I'm good at pinpointing where this gun is in time and space, because I've done it so many times. But when it matters, I'm actually bringing vision into play, and I'm quantifying where's the center of the target. Is the dot in the center of the target? Like, and confirm. It's almost like this computer's running, going blah 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 blah. Boom. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like. And so, like, at the same time, though, that doesn't make sense to in conjunction with the predictive shooting. Like, how can I shoot 30 rounds in a dip size group at 10 yards away at 0.2 splits or less, but I'm not able to do what I'm doing in that draw in that time frame? You know what I mean? Like I don't know. The eyeballs trip me out, man. I got nothing. I'm gonna stop there and let you kind of just spill your thoughts.
I think there's like on the draw in particular, I think that everybody talks about trying to be as efficient as possible, and I think being visually efficient is important as well. And so, I mean, the same thing if we discuss this in relation to iron sights, of going, hey, I'm going to look at the target, see what I want to shoot. I'm going to pull the gun out. As it starts to come up, now I'm paying attention to, oh, the sights are rising, they're getting closer. And then I'm going to go back to the target to see where I want to bring this gun to. And I'm going to hop back to the sights and reconfirm front, rear, that kind of thing. That's visually inefficient. But from a dot standpoint, I think that's why it's such a huge benefit, is it simplifies a lot of that. But I think the confirmation and the level of imposed stress, if you want to call it that, definitely alters how much attention you're going to pay and how much, focus or.
So you're saying it could be that this has really nothing to do with, well, not nothing, less to do with what the eyes are looking at and more to do with the stakes at hand and how much mental quantification you're given this.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, what we started this with, which was the MESA study, they also had them hooked up to heart rate monitors and shit like that. And regardless of the level of experience or skill, they all spiked to 170, 180 beats per minute. The less trained folks, that probably had a more adverse effect than the guy that has more stress inoculation training behind him, maybe been in more stressful situations than the guy that shot it before him and all that kind of bullshit. So I guess that's another piece of the training side of the house, right? Is what is how well can you manage that stress based on experience with stress type of shit, right? And I get competition is, adds that level of stress, right? I was trying to win some bitch or do well, not look like a spaz, whatever your fucking goal is on the day. But my guess is everybody here that has shot competition has had a little bit of a heart rate bump when the buzzer goes off. And maybe it's the exact same heart rate bump, but based on Mark's experience in competition compared to mine, that heart rate bump doesn't affect him, as bad as mine does.
Yeah.
Could be.
And I think that's just inoculation to the task, right? Like I've just,
yeah.
I
Which
just
is what
don't
stress inoculation is, right?
I will say, man, I'm to the point where I don't want to say I don't believe it, because there's always some weirdo out there, but I'm pretty solid in making the statement that there is no such thing in competition as no pressure at all. Like, there's no such thing. It's always going to be there. Josh, is there anything you know about whether or not stress inoculation affects vision and what like how that actually happens?
So two parts to that. Eyeballs, when they receive whatever stress neurotransmitter you want to call it, whether that's cortisol or that kind of thing, it affects like the sympathetic nervous system. The fight or flight will open the pupil up, and that brings in more light, and that decreases our ability to focus up close, and it decreases tear production, so the eyes aren't watering halfway through this gig. All of those things are an eyeball response to a stressful situation, call it that way. But the brain processing part of it, I feel like, is very much so. I don't have science, or I don't have any like studies I can point to say that that's a thing. I feel like it's very much so the same thing as to being able to play it back afterwards. When guys talking about being in a car accident or that kind of stuff, for the 16-year-old who hops out of the car and had no idea what was going on, they have a very poor recollection of that versus the person who's, you know, been doing donuts in their car in the snow forever, and then they go, oh, yep, I pushed it just a little too far, and they can play it back frame by frame.
That's super wild. So like, and this is a thing that I just like happened upon just now while you were talking about that. Like I can remember the last USPSA match I shot, which was 4 weeks ago. I'm sitting here making sure of myself before I say this, but I'm almost positive I can remember where every single shot went on every stage of every target of every stage. Like I remember where they went. You know what I mean? That's trippy. Okay.
One, oh, David, he's a Colorado cop here.
What up, David?
Can you get to a point of subconscious visual efficiency, or will you always have to pay attention and focus on what your eyes do?
I feel like I'm subconsciously visually efficient.
My take on that is that the eyes lead the body. And so if your eyes are doing a whole lot of inefficiency on the way to the target, so is the body. And so as you clean that up, starting with the eyes is a good place to start, of going, hey, Bill's got something to say to that.
No, I was Red Colts. He said David sucks. They're friends, so it's funny. Go ahead.
Ha!
Oh, yeah. But maybe I was up high on that. Anyways, but yeah, starting with, you know, the quiet eye, you know, thought process on that. Hey, I'm going to be very attentive to this. Some guys have even talked about like when they're shooting irons, and that I feel like going back to irons on this is helpful because the dot simplifies the visual part of it. So guys who are at a really high level with irons oftentimes are playing more of a visual game than the dot. It takes a lot of this out of it. But so and you can do this if you're experienced with it or whatnot, is you can like preset your vision prior to doing something, because you have it's not a reflexive action, but it can be something that you control. So you can focus your eyes without having a target to focus them at yet. So if you're like, hey, I know I'm going to be front sight focused here in a second when the beep goes off, guys will preset their vision or focus their eyes to where, hey, in a second when the sights show up, my sights will already be in focus. So it takes about a 0.3 second lag, 300 millisecond lag for the eyes to focus up to irons. And so guys will go, okay, hey, I'm charged, and bring that accommodation into where the sights are going to show up in a minute. And that would be like a visual efficiency thing of sooner, not faster. All the guys, you know.
Bill, have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
So that's trippy. So I had a guy actually walk me through that one time, and it blew my freaking mind. Like I set up a dry fire target, and like hold your thumb up in front of your face and all that kind of stuff, and then move it, and then hold it up, move it, and hold it up, and then like try to keep that visual focus. Freaking crazy. Which
leads into a question I wrote down here, and you know, on the subconscious shit and all that. I mean, we see it in CQB a lot, particularly, you know, new dudes coming into it. And now they got a team moving around them, and if it's a fast-paced type of clearing, they don't know what the fuck they just saw, even when there's no danger. They know it's a training iteration, it's going to be a dry run, right? And so one of the things to try to force them to get over this shit would be, once we add in simunitions and live role players, they hit the house, they go all the way to the end, and then once they get to the back of the house, I would ask dudes what was in the living room, and they're like, fucking no, beats me. You didn't see nothing in the living room? No, dude. Was there a couch in the motherfucker? Was there? I mean, what the fuck was there? Type of shit. And they can't remember none of that bullshit because they were so, I guess, stressed. Right? Their heart rate was up. All that kind of shit. All their worries about making it from point A to point B. And then, of course, the more you do it, it was a fucking plaid couch, and it was in this corner. There was a coffee table. I stepped over this, that, the other thing. And you can replay damn near everything you did in the fucking house, and it's just no longer an issue. My question, and then that's just a sidebar thing. The question is there any scientific research or data that tells you how quickly is the human eye capable of, I'm looking right at you right now, Josh, right? I can see you crystal clear in my little screen here, and I'm going to shift my vision up to my bathroom door, which is probably fucking 10 yards away, and hard focus on the doorknob, and then back to you. So how fast can that focal shift happen? What is the time frame for that to occur? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so there's two.
that's a bad example. Even if I held my phone up so that you were in line with that knob, right, and I'm going directly from you to the knob, back and forth, how long does that shift take? Not the eyeball movement, just the focus shift.
Yeah. So there's two types of eye movements. There's a pursuit, and that's when you're following a moving target. And then there's a saccade, and a saccade is when you're jumping from a fixed point to a fixed point. The saccades they're called ballistic because of how fast they are. They're like in the hundreds of miles per hour if you were to shake it out. You're probably more than everybody else's, but like it's pretty close. So they're extremely quick, and that's going to outpace whatever. And that's the
Can
same
you give
thing
me
as
that in is it a 1/100th of a second, 1/1000th? Is it a tenth? What is it?
yeah, 100th probably. I mean, from fixation to fixation, it may be a little slower, but it's so fast that when you do so you're leaving point A to go to point B, your brain shuts off vision on the way across because it would make you dizzy if you were.
It's my shootouts example. It's the center fed door with the goddamn dude in the center. They're worried about the corner. They'll never see that motherfucker, man. It's a trip.
Yeah.
That's freaking cool, man.
So 1/100th of a second.
Yeah, sure.
So it is possible then if I'm running 40 splits for my eyeball to go target, dot, because that's 4/10.
So there's.
And
sure.
I don't even think about it. It just is doing it.
Yeah. I feel like so.
Case closed.
I rest my case.
I have clues.
Yeah.
I done found the crew.
I feel like it doesn't have to be a one or the other if you open up your awareness to where you're seeing both at the same time.
I really dig how like you started out talking about it's not so much what you're focused on as it is what you're paying attention to, like that drives the train. You know what I mean? Because like for me, that doesn't set off the BS alarm, right? Like as far as when you said that, I wasn't immediately like, no, that's not what's happening. Like I was like, oh snap, okay, maybe that is what's happening. And the more we've kind of talked through this and thought about this, I do think that I'm now of the opinion that it's not so much that I'm focused at a certain point, it's that I'm paying attention to a certain thing more than something else, right? And I think that shutting off the dot, occluding the dot, causes you to do that just by default. Like you have nothing else to look at. Like there's nothing else to really pay attention to if you want to accomplish this task. Because if you pay more attention to the dot than you do the target, you won't see a target anymore. Right? Like you're forcing them to pay attention to the thing that will give them the best result, which is where is my dot on the target instead of my dot is, oh, there it is, there. You know what I mean? But I which makes a ton of sense. I'm on board with it.
Well, the other variable is Josh could be the worst fucking optometrist in America.
He may be. Guys that make C's graduate too, baby. Ask me how I know.
So I used to do a thing. I don't know who told me this or if I read it somewhere, the fuck it was, but essentially I had an hour and a half commute to get home from work every night when I was working. And it was traffic was just clogged, right? When I wasn't driving far, for fuck's sake. It was just slow as fuck. And so I had read somewhere that visual training and all this kind of shit, to my normal, how I'm driving the car shit, reach out with a Sharpie and put me a little crosshair on the windshield and then focus the license plate, then the crosshair, right? And make sure they're both crystal clear. And initially I'd find my eyeball doing some weird shit, right? Where if I went from the license plate and then try to quickly pick up that little tiny cross, and it was tiny, right? A little crosshair, it would be all fuzzy, and I could see and feel my eyes, for lack of a better.
Mark, did you get that, or did he break up for you too?
He's all dicked up. Billy, the internet's dicked up. You must have a blizzard coming in. He's still talking. Oh boy. Billy, can you hear it? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Oh Lord. I got nothing. I don't know what's going on. That sucks because we were really going good. Hey, thumbs up if you can hear me. He got nothing.
Yeah, how about now?
Oh,
Got me now?
guys,
Got him
I had a
now.
phone
I
call
got him
coming in.
now. I don't know what happened, man.
A phone call was coming in, so I killed it, but for some
Oh,
reason.
yeah. I hate when that happens.
So what I was saying is that because I could see the entire environment, right? I'm seeing all the cars on the freeway, obviously downrange, all that shit. I have a very scenic view of Mount Rainier on my drive home. That's all in my vision space. And then this tiny crosshair, I would find there was times when I was trying to snap into that crosshair, I could feel my eyeballs trying to figure out what's the focal range. The more I did it, the easier that became, right? So the validity of that drill for whoever the fuck told me about it or I read about it made sense to me. And so it's just, I ain't got nothing else to do. May as well do this shit while I'm sitting here in traffic. And I think that experiment, there's still a lot of information out there, right? I can still see the car, I can see the license plate out there, but the focal shift was so dramatic that if I was focused at that little crosshair, I didn't have a chance to fucking reading the license plate numbers. That makes sense. It's just, and so the speed with which I was able to make that transition happen, I think kind of goes along at least my thought process and why this conversation is even occurring tonight is, are the guys at that are shooting at a reasonably high level, right? Whatever you want to define that as, a PSA class or a guy that's capable of doing certain shit, whatever the fuck it is. I think, and what you said about, how quickly the eye can shift focus. And again, it doesn't fucking matter, right? The results are what matters. And I think we all agree that tactical or goddamn target focus is the way to do it, to see the environment and maintain better situational awareness. There's no disputing that. But simply telling new dudes with a red dot say start target focus may or may not be exactly what those high level dudes are doing to achieve the success they've gotten. There may be a whole lot of confirmation of a bunch of shit going on. And that really was the point of this whole conversation, man.
So I was reading up before this, and there was a study done where they had college students versus Navy fighter pilots, and they were watching their eyes to see how they compared. And the only one that was similar is the near to far rock. And so that's when you're going from license plate to crosshairs on the dashboard kind of a thing. And so over time, the ability to track things at a distance or side to side, how quickly and accurately your saccades will land from target A to target B to target C, that kind of thing. According to that study, there was a lot of improvement as people were training that side of it. To some level, to flex your eye muscle and bring focus up close, it's going to take a similar amount of time for each one of us to do that, according to that. So I think that a lot of the speed and precision that comes is back and forth. When we're not trying to bring the eyes up close, that focus piece, there's a lag there. And so when we go from dot to target, I think that can happen very rapidly and does happen more rapidly for people who have done it a ton of times. But they're not necessarily going, okay, from a distance target coming back to my sights and then back and forth. That piece is somewhat slow regardless. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, so Mark, we had was that the dude in Washington? Was he a fighter pilot? I can't remember. Remember, old boy came down from Alaska.
Either a Black Hawk or something similar. He's a helicopter pilot.
Bird pilot. And then I had a dude that was an A-10 pilot in Alabama, right? And so we're doing the interest, like, oh, I'm gonna watch this motherfucker here, right? He must have super duper vision going on, type of thing. And he may have been seeing shit good, but he can't shoot a pistol with the fuck. So that's a joke. He was shooting fine. I didn't
joke,
see the correlation,
but it was real.
For me, and I was hoping to see the thing. You know what I mean? I was hoping, like, this son of a bitch has to have some goddamn vision. I mean, think about how often he is looking around at shit, right, within the cockpit and without. But I just, the correlation wasn't there. At least that was visual to me on the range. That makes sense. And again, I'm joking. He wasn't a shitty shooter and that kind of crap. I just thought it was an interesting thing to see if maybe some of that would manifest itself in front of me, and it did not. But that don't mean what he wasn't doing. I just couldn't tell. Just interesting.
Bill, do you have anything else written down?
Yeah,
so ready to kick us here in a minute.
This is an interesting one, right? So I just got me a new little carry pistol. I had been carrying a Glock 43 forever with a Duke defense mount. I threw one of my old RMR 06 or RM 06s on it with a 3.25 dot. Been carrying it forever. my history in 2012, whenever the fuck it was, I transitioned to red dot full time. My first dot was 3.25. I fucked around, looked at a 6.5 MOA dot, you know, whatever was available at that time. I since then have looked at a 1 MOA dot on shit, and I have a variety of red dots now of varying sizes, but most of them in that 3 MOA-ish range. So I got me this new little carry gun. I'm talking to my friend Mark, because he has the same gun. You know, what you got going on, this and that, the other thing. And he says, hey, man, you want to save me a couple bucks? So I bought a 407K. You know, it's got the big ass dot in it and this and that, the other thing. I said, all right, based on the conversation, I agree. For a small carry gun, I don't need that refined of an aiming point. Good to hook. All right, I'm going to get me this thing and save me a few dollars. So I got that dot in. I assumed it was something to do with my vision, and maybe it is, but on those 3 MOA dots, even with my glasses on, the whole shit, no matter how I put them in these progressive lenses, it is a star bursting, nasty motherfucker, to the point where I've gone like, man, I'm going to clean the fuck out of these lenses. I'm going to, you know, what's the best shit out there for cleaning a lens and the emitter? And, you know, how can I get this dot to come back to being what it was back in the day? And nothing has worked. And then I get this, is it 6 MOA, Mark? I don't remember, the 407K? Yeah. Or is it 6? It's 6. So I get this 6 MOA dot, get him out of the gun, and I took it to range to get it done. I was like, God damn, that motherfucker is a perfect fucking circle compared to my 3 MOA-ish dots that all flare the fuck out regardless of how bright I have the setting at. So what the fuck is up with that?
That's a good question. I don't know enough about like dot design and how each of the company does the optics and that kind of stuff through them. I've got the same thing, one of those 407Ks, and I feel like there's both ways to go on the discussion of dot size.
Now, to be clear,
yeah,
I have multiple Holosun 507s. I got a 509, but they're all in that same range. So I don't think it's anything to do with how Holosun is grinding the glass or the lens coatings. It is the size of the fucking dot. I think that's the issue, right? Because comparing Holosun to Holosun to Holosun, oh, look at Mark, got his hand up like it's kindergarten and shit. Go ahead, Mark.
I have an explanation,
Cool.
and I want eyeball doctor to confirm or deny the quality of this explanation. So, I think that in order to see a small dot, this is 1 MOA, 2.5, 325, whatever, right? A smaller dot at the same level that you perceive to be able to see a bigger dot, you must have that smaller dot set to a brighter setting to be able to catch the eye, pick it up, you know, that kind of thing. So I've always been on the big dot train, and here's why. And this is, here we go, right? This is country boy logic. If I give you a child's blue plastic swimming pool, right, from Walmart, the 5 foot wide pool, whatever, right? And I say, all right, I want you to center an object in it and confirm its center and shoot as fast as possible. Would you rather that object be a quarter or a beach ball, right? It's obvious to me that it's easier to center and confirm center faster a larger object than it is a smaller one, right? So that's a thing. I think that smaller dots lead to a little bit of overconfirmation, and it's not so much due to the fact that the perceived movement is increased as much as it's due to the fact that it's just smaller and harder to say, is it in the middle? Yeah, I think maybe here, maybe this, you know. The other side of it is, I think that to see a beach ball size dot, for the purpose of arbitrary argument, the brightness can be significantly reduced compared to its counterpart of a quarter sized object, right? Where I got to see it and quantify it quickly. I've got to have it bright enough to notice it, kind of thing. If that makes sense. So
I just dimmed this gun has a RMO6 on it, 3.25 dot. Dimmed it as far as I can and still see it, and I still see it fucking star bursting on me, no matter what the brightness of. Now it gets worse, obviously, the brighter I make it. But at its lowest level where I can actually perceive it, I'm still seeing it starburst. But I don't get that with the 407K. It just stays a good fucking circle, man.
Maybe it's just that Holosun figured out a way to make circles better. I don't know.
But that's not the case on my 509 and the 507s and the other Holosuns that I have.
I agree. I know what you're talking about. I you know, all I'm saying is that the bigger the dot, the more perfect a dot it seems to be to me. I don't know why that is.
So there,
What's the story on the eyes, Doc?
there's levels of aberrations, and aberrations are blurriness. And so, like the first few levels are what we correct for in glasses, and those are the easiest and the low-hanging fruit. And then there's higher level aberrations. Like if you go to LASIK and you're going to go to a good place for LASIK, they're trying to clear up higher order aberrations to try and give you the best results possible, so you get less star bursting off of headlights and things like coma and these other higher level aberrations. I would be interested, have you looked at like two of the same dots, like a 407K and a 507K, where they're both in the same window shape and that kind of stuff, and still feel like the bigger dot is more clear? Because it.
Yes. Yeah. I got a 507 and a 407 right next to each other, two different size dots. The bigger dot is absolutely a good circle to me. And the other, no matter what, any small dot, the three-ish range dots, they all are bursting somewhere. Sometimes it's a complete sun. Sometimes there's, just flares that come out of them.
Yeah. I don't know if I got one for you on that. I would suspect that my thought is, because I'm going back and forth between 509 and 507 or 407. I'm doing the same thing.
So, based on what you know about human eyeballs, would you say that it's very likely that the issue is related to the technology itself, not the human eyeball and size of dots?
Yeah, I feel like to some extent, even when we give you perfect glasses, same thing with nighttime headlights. We're going to shrink them down as much as possible. There will be a little bit of starburst there, and that's just because those higher order aberrations. Why is that better on a bigger dot than a smaller one?
Yeah. Okay.
Zane
All right.
just said he's the opposite.
Yeah, Bill, I don't want to rush it. 3 minutes, they're going to shut us down. You got any other questions?
I got no more notes here.
Got one more inquiry before we leave. So, Doc, you're taking a brand new shooter out to shoot a red dot pistol. What are you going to tell them they need to do with their vision?
Look at the target, put the dot on top of the target, pull the trigger.
I'll be doggone. We've been right all along.
Well, I know that's okay. What we've been trying to figure out is that
what changes? What changes, if anything, with iron sights?
Can you close one eye? Like which one's there? Which eye? When you hold it out in front of you, which eye are you putting in front of? Can you close your? If they can close non-dominant eye, that's the easiest way to start. Because otherwise, they're going to see, because they haven't done 10,000 draws to go, okay, I'm going to focus on the front side. I'm going to see two rear sights, ignore the second one, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to clean up their visual clutter. It's like going back to the to the Olympics.
Those three focal planes, would it? I mean, and this may be more of a shooting question than an eyeball question. Like to you, I guess, speaking strictly from an optometry perspective, it doesn't really matter what they focus on. Like they can focus on the rear sight, front sight, or target. But as far as shooting goes, is there any particular way that you lean for shooting with iron sights?
Personal experience, I would say like front sight or sight package, the combination of what's on the gun, and that's where the focus or emphasis should go.
Cool. Like I feel like that's what I do a lot of. Like with irons, I see everything in the same blurry manner instead of one particular clear thing. But I always thought I was weird, so maybe that makes sense. So
I would, yeah. I mean, in that regard, I'd say focus on the gun. The rear sight being less important than that, but when they're watching what this is doing, I think that's where the priority should be. That's where your focus should be on this package. Whether it's really fine here or really fine here, a lot of people, especially in an early phase, are not going to notice a difference of, I was rear sight focused on that shot versus the next one. But paying attention to what the gun's doing, let that float over the target is, I feel like, a good starting point.
Super cool.
We're stuck there, man. Right? I mean, that is the crux of this whole fucking conversation, man, which is, hey, man, stay target focused. That is the simple answer. And at the lowest levels, that is the right answer. Just do that shit, man. And that guy's going to start to get a level of success. But is that really what we're doing? And at a point, how do you progress beyond that? And I guess a chunk of this in my head is there a way that I can devise or design a drill or a thing or a block of instruction or something to force this shit to go on so that they see, no pun intended, right? What maybe at a certain level what they should be doing, and then give them something to work on that allows that visual piece to get better, man. No different than that crossroad.
I think a lot of this ends up being like it's all going back to, and Bill, I know would echo this. I don't want you to just do what I'm telling you to do. I want you to understand why I'm telling you to do it. And in order to do that, I've got to first understand why I'm telling you to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if I just know that when I, push the gas, the car goes, that's not enough, right? I got to understand why that occurs. You know what I mean? Because only then can we find the little abnormalities and start to correct them based on the individual, because everybody is truly different.
To me, this is the functional equipment in law enforcement land of slow down and get your hits.
God almighty.
That's right. How many times have you heard it though? Dude, he's just parroting what he got told. He's just he don't understand what the fuck he's talking about. And this stay target focused, brother. Well,
brother,
at a certain point, can you move beyond that shit? And how do you figure the fuck out, man? That's the only thing.
All right.
I think it's also a new problem because red dots are new to the shooting world, and so this is something that's being solved. Like the terminology that we're using, that kind of stuff is figuring out what this is going to develop into. Because nobody knows how to describe what they're seeing. Nobody knows how to say, I can't see what you see, and you can't see what Mark sees, and so
particularly at that speed. Right?
Hell, I don't even know what I see at that speed sometimes. I'm serious, man. Like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Like one of the hardest things in shooting is to make somebody see what you see and feel what you feel.
Right.
Like and that's man, I genuinely can't thank you enough for giving up 2 hours of your life to come on here and chat with us about that. It's been super interesting. We Bill and I oftentimes sit around, and drink beer after class talking about stuff like this, but we never really, we don't know the answer. Like, we're just kind of speculating all kind of stuff. And you kind of give a lot of concrete evidence to some things that were theory. And that's super, super appreciated.
Appreciate that for sure.
On my part.
Enjoyed the chat. Sometime we got to teach people how to focus the ocular lens on an LVPO.
What? That you can do that?
Yeah.
Been blurry.
But I feel like that's another.
And then you've got the precision shooters that say it's wrong because they're used to a 5-25, and then you've got it's a mess. It's super wild, right? Like can we just adjust that thing until we can see what we need to see? And like why? I don't know. Whatever. Or do whatever you want to do. I'm sure I don't care.
Let's have that chat another time.
Well, yeah, we'll do that. That's a whole nother box.
It is, but there's a way to do it.
There is a way to do it. They put a thing on there.
It's weird.
Yeah. All right, super cool, man. Well, appreciate the heck out of you guys for coming on here, and I'll save this, and I'm sure it'll get some interesting reaction. But other than that, appreciate the heck out of you guys.
Thanks, fellas.
Let me know if I can help you.
Yeah. Maybe see you guys later.
Bye.